When you think of receivers in the early 2000s, chances are T.O. pops into your mind. Terrell Owens was impossible to stop on the field, and his antics and personality made him stand out off the field as well. He cemented himself as a legendary receiver and added serious offense ability to any roster he was on. It's not every day a player has the impact on the game that T.O. was able to have. Today on FootballLore, we explore the life and career of NFL legend Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens was born in 1973 in the small town of Alexander City, Alabama. His mother, Marilyn Hurd, raised him in a home with 3 siblings and his grandmother. Alexander City is the largest city in its county within Alabama, but it only has a population of 15,000 people in 2024. At the time Owens was born, it had just 12,000, meaning there wasn't a large amount of professional sports coaches around. On top of there being a lack of sports infrastructure in the city, his grandmother was not a fan of organized sports. From a young age, Owens had become enamored with football. He would watch it whenever he could. He began to ask if he could sign up for a league to play, but his grandmother forbade him from playing organized sports until high school. The reasoning isn't clear as to why, but for some reason she simply denied his pleas to sign up for football. Owens would spend a lot of his free time watching football instead, and became a huge fan of the greatest receiver of all time, Jerry Rice. Owens spent most of his childhood wishing he would be allowed to play sports and showcase his athletic ability. So when he got the chance to join organized sports in high school, he obviously jumped on the opportunity. He ended up participating in football, baseball, track, and basketball while attending Benjamin Russell High School. Originally, football was not what he was naturally best at. In fact, he wasn't even a starter for most of his high school career. He wasn't a starter until his junior year, when a teammate had to miss a game due to sickness. When he did get on the field, he played well, but not necessarily enough to justify a lot of D1 attention for just his football talents. He did receive an athletic scholarship from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, but it was mostly for basketball and track. They would allow him to play football, but no one expected him to turn into a receiving superstar. You see, the thing about Terrell is that he is immensely gifted athletically in every sport. He was good enough to play in the 1995 NCAA basketball tournament, and on top of that, had set some school records when it came to track. Compared to football, he wasn't even a starter his freshman year in Tennessee. In the offseason, he was able to focus on the skills he was missing as a receiver. He had the huge benefit of an out-of-this-world speed. After all, as a track star, he had built-in leg strength. Something clicked that offseason that transformed Owens into the receiver we are used to today. He caught 38 passes for 724 yards and 8 touchdowns. This meant he was averaging 19 yards per catch and a touchdown every 5 passes. Performances like this caught everyone's attention, and suddenly he was gaining respect all across the NCAA. Beyond just the college level, NFL scouts began to pay attention to what was going on in Chattanooga. His speed, combined with his big playability, was something a lot of professional teams were looking for. There was no question of his work ethic. After all, he was playing 3 sports at the college level and performing in all of them. His junior year was a drop down in performance, mainly due to the increasing amount of double team coverage he had to face. He had 34 catches for 357 yards and 3 touchdowns. While this was a slight decrease compared to his sophomore season, it taught him a valuable ability to be able to create space even when under double coverage. Unfortunately, when you have speed and route running ability like Owens, getting used to being double-teamed is something you have to do. His senior year saw a return to form, with 43 receptions for 667 yards and 1 touchdown. This set the record for receptions in a single season at the time at Chattanooga. By this point, he had proven he could perform at a consistently high level in the college game. NFL scouts had years of tape to examine, and a lot of people were fans, but there was still the question of the level of his competition. Chattanooga is a fine school, but some thought that he had only put up numbers like that since he wasn't playing the best schools in the country. This caused his draft stock to drop considerably. It was also thought that his play style was rough around the edges, and it would take a team a few years to polish his play style to work in the NFL. All of these things caused him to fall out of the first and second round. But when the San Francisco 49ers had the clock, with the 89th pick in the 1996 NFL Draft, they used it to select Terrell Owens, to become the newest member of the team. It was a huge honor for Owens, as it meant he would be teammates with his favorite receiver from his childhood, Jerry Rice. Owens was not expected to start for the 49ers, but he had become used to having to prove himself time and time again. In high school and college, he had to earn the right to start, so he knew that he would do whatever it takes to make sure he had the same opportunities in the NFL. He initially got playing time on special teams in a game against the New Orleans Saints, and while he didn't have a massive impact, it led to him slowly being more involved in the offense. In Week 4, he caught his first 2 passes for a total of 6 yards. These aren't the numbers the NFL would be used to seeing from Owens a few years from now, but considering very few people even expected him to wear a uniform to the game, the slowly increasing involvement in the offense was impressive. It would be a few more games until Owens would enter the end zone for the first time off the back of a 45-yard pass from Steve Young against the Cincinnati Bengals. Over the course of his rookie season, he managed to have 35 receptions for 520 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's not bad for someone who wasn't even expected to play in the first place. An unfortunate injury would thrust Owens into an even more prominent role in 1997 when Jerry Rice suffered an ACL injury early in the season. This made Owens the new #1 target for Steve Young, and he managed to have 60 catches for 936 yards and 8 touchdowns. The Niners made a playoff appearance where they defeated the Vikings in the divisional round. Owens had 1 touchdown in this game, which was his first in the postseason. Off the field, unfortunately, things were being mismanaged behind Owens' back. He had obviously begun to get some serious money after entering the NFL, and he realized he was going to need advisors to manage the money. Unfortunately for him, the experts he hired to help him invest his NFL millions ended up embezzling and stealing a vast majority of the money he made throughout his NFL career. Of the over $80 million he made through his NFL career, a vast majority was stolen from him. His reported net worth is only $500,000 today. Regardless of the unfortunate state of his financial advisors, he continued to shine on the field. In 1998, he broke the 1,000-yard mark for the first time. He had 67 catches for 1,097 yards for 14 touchdowns. This would land him an appearance in the playoffs, where he would catch the game-winning touchdown to defeat the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round. He and Steve Young had developed a rhythm as quarterback and receiver. It certainly doesn't hurt to have a Hall of Fame quarterback throwing you the ball. All of that would change the following season when Young would be taken out by injury early in the year. Jeff Garcia took over as quarterback, and obviously going from a Hall of Famer player to someone who was pretty good in the Canadian Football League was going to cause a drop in production for Owens. He ended up with just 60 catches for 754 yards and 4 touchdowns. Despite this drop in performance, Jeff Garcia would go on to break the franchise record for passing yards the next season. Steve Young had retired in the offseason, and something clicked for Garcia that led him to absolutely dominate the league. He threw for 4,278 yards, and with that, Owens' production rose to the highest level of his career so far. He had 97 catches for 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns. He had one game where he had 20 catches for 283 yards. Owens was catapulted from solid receiver to absolute star over the course of this season. The next few years, Garcia and Owens would make magic together in the stat book. In 2001, he would have 93 receptions for another 1,400 yards and 16 touchdowns. He was finding his way to the end zone so often that his celebrations have become icons of football in their own right. He made the Pro Bowl for the first time this year, which added to his legacy for his quest to enter the Hall of Fame. While Garcia and Owens could create magic on the scoreboard, they were really struggling with having true postseason success. They could get in and maybe even win a game, but with a franchise like the 49ers, your fans take success to mean one thing: a Lombardi trophy. 2002 saw Owens cracking the 100 receptions in a season mark, with another 1,300 yards added to his stat sheet. He did have a slight downturn in his touchdown production with just 13, but the Niners made it back to the playoffs yet again. Owens was a key part of an insane comeback they pulled off against the New York Giants, with 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion to secure a 39-38 victory. Unfortunately for the Niners and Owens, they would lose a week later to the eventual Super Bowl champion Buccaneers. By this point, relations between Owens and the Niners were beginning to fray. They couldn't see eye to eye on pay, Plus, Owens was always very outspoken about his opinions on the organization, and while some franchises embraced that mentality, it led to internal conflict between himself and the ownership. 2003 would be his last year in San Francisco, and while this left some of the city heartbroken, since he was a fan favorite, the events that occurred for him to leave was a drama to say the least. He did have a solid year with 80 receptions and 1,100 yards with 9 touchdowns. But in the offseason, he told his agent to evoke his option to not return to the team. The problem came when his agent filed the paperwork late to make Owens a free agent. He didn't tell Owens this, so he went on and acted as a free agent meeting with other teams. He wanted to sign a contract with the Philadelphia Eagles and take his talents to one of the founding cities of our country. When he reached an agreement with them, the Niners then claimed he had no right to sign the contract since he was still under contract with them. This led to a lawsuit between the Players Association and the Niners franchise over the issue. The 49ers tried to trade Owens to the Baltimore Ravens for a second-round pick, and this further complicated the issue. The lawsuit dragged on for some time, but at the end of the day, the Ravens had their pick returned to them. The Niners got a conditional 5th-round pick and Brandon Whiting, and the Eagles were able to sign Owens as a receiver. Obviously, after this media circus, the nation was anxious to see how Owens would perform for the Eagles. But sadly, for football fans, he would sustain a severe ankle sprain and fractured fibula after a dirty tackle by Roy Williams. Up to this point, he had 77 receptions for 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns. The Eagles were one of the best teams in the league, but this injury was devastating. Some injuries leave players with room to bounce back in just a few weeks. But most medical professional and sports personnel thought that there was literally no way Owens was going to be able to take the field for the remainder of the season. This injury was so severe he had to have surgery, including a metal addition to his leg. The trainers all said there was no way he was going to be able to play for the rest of the season. However, the Eagles went on to have an incredible season and reach Super Bowl 39, where they were facing the New England Patriots. Owens knew this was a lifelong dream of his to compete in the highest level of football possible, so he decided he was going to play regardless of his injury. He managed to get into shape and have 9 receptions for 122 yards in the big game. Unfortunately, this wasn't enough for the Eagles to win, but still the ability of Owens to recover and perform at a high level after weeks away from the game cemented not only his commitment to the sport, but the unreal ability he had as a receiver and showman. This offseason had even more drama, with Owens demanding to renegotiate his contract with the Eagles and taking cheap shots at the Eagles quarterback, Donovan McNabb, claiming that he had gotten tired during the Super Bowl, and that is why the Eagles lost. This caused a feud between the two, and as a receiver, causing drama with your quarterback usually doesn't end well. The relationship between the Eagles and Owens fell even more when they denied his request to play in a summer league game for the Sacramento Kings. Owens threatened to hold out of camp until a deal was reached, but the Eagles refused to budge. He did end up reporting to camp, but all of this caused another media circus around the Philadelphia locker room. The contract was in place for the season, but now he had to repair his relationship with McNabb. McNabb didn't appear to let the comments from Owens prevent him from playing the game, and the two still connected for 47 passes and 700 yards through the first few games of the season. Despite things appearing to go back to normal, there was even more drama on the horizon. After the Week 9 matchup against the Cowboys, Owens was seen wearing a Cowboys jersey on the team plane. This led to more tension in the locker room that culminated with Hugh Douglas and Owens getting into a fistfight in the training room. The next day, Owens went on ESPN and attacked McNabb once again. He even said that the Eagles would be undefeated if Brett Favre was their quarterback. McNabb reportedly took this as a slap in the face, which was definitely fair. He had put the past comments behind them in order to win more games. But here, Owens was continuing to attack him totally out of turn. 2 days later, the Eagles decided to suspend Owens over his disruption to internal operations. Andy Reid had demanded Owens apologize to McNabb, but Owens had half-heartedly apologized, which caused Reid to give up. He was suspended for the remainder of the season and later apologized to the fans and organization for his behavior. He was released by the team in 2006 and just 4 days later signed to the Dallas Cowboys for a 3-year deal. This was a clear middle finger to the Eagles, considering the Cowboys are a divisional rival they face twice a year. It also added to the legendary status of a showman Owens has to this day. You can't deny that the man knows how to entertain. There was a game during the 2006 season where he made his initial return to Philadelphia. The crowd absolutely taunted him, throwing out chants and boos throughout the game. Despite Owens trash-talking the Eagles' secondary throughout the week, he was held to just 3 catches for 45 yards in the loss. Jerry Jones went on to praise Owens for his commitment to the Dallas squad, and the city embraced him as a Cowboys star. He led the league that season in receiving touchdowns with 13. He also had 85 receptions for another 1,100 yards. The next year in 2007, he had 81 catches for 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. 2008 would be his last year in Dallas, and it was certainly a drop in production. He had just 69 catches for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. That is still an incredible season, but Owens continued to be plagued by injuries. At this point, it was certain he would be able to play through an entire season. Despite this, Cowboys owner Jerry Jones promised Owens his future with the team was secure, which is what shocked Terrell so much when he was released in May of 2009. Owens, to this day, claims he was absolutely blindsided by this, and knowing Jerry Jones' reputation, I'm almost certain he blindsided him on purpose. For his level of production and injury history, he just wasn't worth the money the Cowboys were going to have to pay him. From here, he was in the twilight of his career. He spent 1 year with the Buffalo Bills, where he had 55 catches for 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. After that, he went to Cincinnati for 1 more year, where he had 72 catches for 900 yards and 9 touchdowns. Unfortunately, in the 2011 offseason, he suffered a torn ACL, and despite hosting a televised workout in October, no NFL teams were willing to offer him a contract for the next season. He wasn't done with football yet. He played 1 year for the Indoor Football League and then signed a contract with the Seahawks that only lasted 20 days before he was released. He claimed that he was still training and seeking a contract until 2015, but no teams had been interested in offering him a deal. In a way, this was best for his legacy on the field. Some star players have a few crappy years at the end of their career. Owens went out with a nearly 1,000-yard season, meaning his consistency is almost unmatched. Outside of football, Owens is the father of 4 children, 2 daughters and 2 sons. One of his daughters is a college volleyball player. His son Tariq is a receiver for the San Francisco 49ers, and his other 2 children are working high-level careers. Owens has had some issues with child support over the years. At one point, he was responsible for over $45,000 a month in child support to his different baby mothers. This was even displayed on an episode of Dr. Phil in 2012. His legacy as a football player was undeniable, and despite a gap between his eligibility and induction, he was eventually inducted to the NFL Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Even during this event, he had to turn it into a spectacle, skipping the official NFL induction and throwing his own celebration of his addition to the Hall of Fame. He is the only inductee to have skipped an induction to throw a competing event, which is totally in line with Owens' legacy within the league. Outside of his incredible on-the-field play, he also is known for his prolific touchdown celebrations, which fans around the league either found entertaining or the most annoying thing they have ever seen. In 2000, he had a Cowboys player ejected after he leveled Owens for attempting a second touchdown celebration on the Cowboys logo at midfield. In 2002, he famously pulled a Sharpie out of his sock to sign a football before tossing it out into the crowd. The bird dance became famous in Philadelphia during his brief time there, and in Dallas was known for racking up excessive celebration penalties. Football was not the only business venture Owens attempted. He modeled for work, entered in museums, was in tons of commercials, television shows, and films through his career. He even had his own reality show on VH1 for a brief period. In 2019, he was on the cover of the Hall of Fame edition of Madden, which is how you know you actually are a NFL icon. He now spends time focusing on his businesses, appearances on podcasts, and his charity organization. He owns a wine brand called 81, which is a partnership between Owens and Lasorda Family Wines. He also does corporate events, and social media is still bringing in income for the star as well. Combined, he has over 2.5 million followers across all of his social platforms. While he may have been screwed over by his financial advisors, he hasn't let that stop him from continuing to pursue entrepreneurship and financial stability. No matter the sport, whether it be football or business, he just does not give up. Through his career, he managed to haul in 1,078 passes, 15,934 yards, for 153 touchdowns. This places him third all-time for receiving yards, eighth all-time for receptions, and third all-time for receiving touchdowns. This combined with his on and off the field antics means that he is one of the greatest performers on the field and one of the greatest entertainers off of it. This consistent play was also why he was in 6 Pro Bowls, 5 All-Pro teams, and 4 All-NFC teams. I think Owens is a generational star. I also think that is obvious in how different generations perceive him. To people like myself and younger, I think he was an incredibly entertaining piece of the game through my childhood. I love watching his celebrations and keeping up with the latest issue he had created in whatever team he was on. When players act like divas, it is usually followed by a drop in performance, but he still was almost guaranteed to score at least 10 touchdowns a year. Regardless, that's the life and legacy of football legend Terrell Owens. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to press the like button, comment down below if you learned something new in this video, and subscribe for more content. We've been doing a series about NFL players' biographies, and on screen now you'll see Keyshawn Johnson's. He actually managed to go from LA gangster to NFL superstar, so consider giving that a watch. Thank you all so much for your time. Help us get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year.